Welcome to Oda by Pexip. I hope you have your lunch and coffee ready to join me for the next 50 minutes. It's the first Oda gathering after a warm and better than in a long time summer. And now I guess the big top of mind for absolutely everyone is what will work look like in the new normal? Are we talking 2 days a week in the office? 3 days? Can I decide for myself now? Will we even need offices anymore? And how do we lead people when they are remote? Can we use this moment in time to do things differently, to allow for inclusion and meeting equity, to propel innovation and promote wellness and flexibility? I'm Åsmund Fotstad. Please join me in this Oda discussion. How do we make meetings successful and work vibrant in a post-pandemic world? With us in studio, we have Kristin Ruud, SVP of HR and Business Support at Kongsberg Digital. We have Hanne Margrethe Gjerman, architect, partner and CEO at IARC. Mikael Hansson, psychologist and organizational consultant at Corporate Spring. And we have Ingrid Woodhouse, Chief People Officer at Pexip. First, let's dive into the brain. Our brain sets the rules of engagement that shape our interactions at work. But what happens when we meet remotely? Let's meet psychologist Mikael Hansson as he discusses with Ingrid facts around belonging and inclusion in a digital world and how it affects our brain.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for taking the time to participate in this Oda networking event hosted by Pexip.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Great. We thought that today's topic would be how can we ensure successful meetings and vibrant workspaces in this hybrid world? How about we look a bit into the sense of belonging? Why would you say that the sense of belonging is so important to the success of an organization?
For this occasion, I have chosen to emphasize on two fundamental aspects related to the sense of belonging. And I start with stating that we humans are social creatures by necessity. We need one another in order to survive. Going back 100,000 years, we had to have a tribe in order to survive. Today, at least in some countries, we are able to physically survive for much longer. However, we do mentally, psychologically perish do we not have a tribe, or rather a tribe that is accepting us and letting us be a part of it. Secondly, I would like to highlight our limbic system, our emotional system. The dynamic of this neural wiring is crucial to understand in order to understand the impact the sense of belonging has. In short, the limbic system could be described as our first guiding system. Before we developed our cognitive, our rational capacity, we relied on our emotions to steer us in the right direction. The limbic system is extremely fast. It's constantly reacting on the environment. Everything we perceive via our five senses is given an emotional tone. The limbic system could roughly be described as influencing our mind via either positive, rewarding emotions or negative, threatening emotions. And why might this be interesting or related to the sense of belonging? It's based on that these emotional signals influence our cognitive capacity. Would we perceive predominantly positive emotions, we get full access to our cognitive capacity. And by cognitive capacity, I mean our ability to solve problems and create new solutions. Would we, however, experience negative or threatening emotions in a given context, the cognitive capacities are reduced. To what extent they are reduced depends on the intensity of these emotions. And it is now that we approach the reason why the sense of belonging is so crucial. Because would we perceive that we are not included, we are not accepted in a team, in a group where I would like to be included and accepted, we experience intense negative emotions. And I emphasize intense because it relates back to what I said about our survival. Even though we intellectually understand that we might not die if we are not accepted in a team, we get an intense emotional reaction if we are not accepted because of our evolutionary neurological wiring. So, regardless actually if we have a pre, a post, or a hybrid work life in front of us, we need to pay attention to what ways are there in order to actually create as much sense of belonging as possible. I would call it a fundamental need for us. And in the post hybrid world, I think that we need to be inventful, we need to be almost creative in figuring out in what different ways could we create this sense of belonging. Not just meeting it at the office once or twice per week, maybe doing other things as well to ensure that we feel as if we are a part of this organization.
So, Michael, what you're saying is that if we want our employees to be as productive and as innovative as they possibly can, we need to ensure that they have a positive and good sense of belonging.
Yes, absolutely. I would say it is one of the most fundamental needs that we bring to the workspace, to a workplace. Absolutely. It's not just something that is nice to have, it's something that we need to have. And the more we are able to install that sense of belonging, the more productive, the more innovative we will be as human beings. Yes.
Great. And could you give us some examples of what makes us feel as if we belong to a team or an organization?
Absolutely. Before I enter the two examples I have selected, just for the sake of clarity, I here define the sense of belonging as sharing and understanding of the current context, people and task. Sharing and understanding of the current context, people and task. I have chosen two examples, perhaps somewhat unusual, or what might be, and what I claim is important to take into consideration creating this emotion. And I start with the task. One critical challenge for many organizations today is managing the balance between exploitation and exploration. That is, how to manage both developing current existing products as well as inventing, creating new products. Meeting this challenge does not only require that we are aware of what particular challenge we are up for, but also how they shall be tackled. Which way of working might be the most effective. And how might this relate to our sense of belonging, one might wonder. I found a researcher named Daniela Laureiro Martinez, who has in her neurological studies seen that we actually activate different neural circuits when we exploit, respectively explore. Therefore, in our quest to create this sense of belonging, we could start by ensuring that we share the same understanding of what shall be accomplished in a given setting. Would we not share that understanding of what shall be accomplished, we will behave in conflicting ways. We will behave differently. And that always causes us to perceive a situation negatively. If someone is acting in a way I don't understand, because I deem another behavior more appropriate, would I get this negative emotion because of your behavior in that particular moment? Then again, my intellectual capacity will be reduced. If this will be even more critical in a post-pandemic work life, I don't know. I do, however, think that there is a risk that that will happen because there are more ways. We now have more ways of interacting. And with more ways, there are more risks that we have more situations to misinterpret one another. It could go the other way as well. When we have more ways of interacting, trying to solve something, we might become more thorough when we set up, for instance, a meeting. What are we here to accomplish? There is a tendency in real life meetings that we sort of just walk into them and start talking. When we are changing the venues, when we're changing the ways that we talk, then we might become more thorough. So this is one example that is very related to the task at hand, what we are about to accomplish. So an easy way of creating a shared understanding together in a group is to make sure that we all have the same understanding of why we are here and what we are supposed to accomplish. The other example, then I move on to the people aspects. I have chosen another researcher whom I greatly enjoy, Elliot Berkman. He has, among many other things, explored the influence of our perceived identity. An identity founded on individual subjective values. Subjective values could roughly be translated here into what we deem important and valuable in general and in specific situations. He has seen in his studies that these subjective values, they intensely influence our emotional reactions. This means that if we do not share an understanding of what is important to the participating members in a given setting, we risk ending up acting, behaving in a way that is not in line with what each person deems important, therefore eliciting a negative emotional reaction and then ending up in this reduced intellectual capacity. My take on this particular neural dynamic primarily relates to digital interaction. This is not a study, definitely not, that I have conducted. It's merely my observation during this past year and a half that in an office there are multiple ways of figuring out what people deem important. We talk to one another before meetings, we might chit-chat during the meetings, and we chit-chat a bit after the meetings. We go to lunches, we take coffee breaks, we meet at the water cooler, we talk in the corridor. All these situations makes us understand more or less what is important, what is valuable for this particular person. I would think I have seen a number of digital meetings that are really focused on the topics at hand, on the agenda, which means that we miss this figuring out what each individual deem valuable. We behave as if though we are entering a digital meeting room solely wearing our frontal lobes. But that is neurologically impossible. We are entering a meeting, regardless if it's digital or in real life, with both our limbic system and our frontal lobes. And a part of these emotions that are being elicited in a meeting comes from these subjective values, our identity, who we are. So, trying to be really effective, just focusing on the topics at hand on the agenda, I dare say, is a non-successful way of being effective. We miss out on what kind of behaviors do you deem important, do you deem important. If we know that, then we could act more in line with those ones, therefore eliciting positive emotions, therefore ending up with better problem solving and innovative suggestions.
So are you saying that we might have forgotten a bit all about this people leadership that we've focused so much on during the past few years, maybe before the COVID, but that we actually forgot some of our sort of basic people leadership skills?
I think we haven't fully assessed and realized the importance of all the other interfaces, all the dialogues that takes place outside the actual meetings. So I would say that we need to take back and figure out, could we, in a digital manner, get the same emotional reaction? Maybe a really, really simple way of doing that is setting up meetings where we actually do not have an agenda. Just talking about how the day has been. Because without understanding who the persons are that we are collaborating with, our minds will never be able to act in a proper manner.
So I guess it brings us back to after your first point when we said if you really want productive and innovative employees, need to make sure that you care for the entire person and create this strong sense of belonging, which you do through gaining insights and getting to know people and using both sides of our brains or both parts of our brains.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you so much for spending the time with us. It's been a great learning opportunity for me, and I suppose for most of the people that are listening in. So thank you so much.
A pleasure. Thank you for letting me participate.
That was super exciting from Mikael. What do you find the most interesting here from what we heard from Mikael?
Plenty of things, but since we started working with diversity and inclusion in Pexip, I've been really intrigued by the neuroscience of it all. Some time ago, someone made me aware of a recording from the Gartner Summit in 2019, where the keynote speaker, Dr. Steve Robbins, talked about inclusion and exclusion. And to cut a long story short, he explained how a comment in a meeting or certain behaviors could make you feel as an insider or as an outsider. And if you feel like an insider, most things are okay and nothing to worry about. But if you feel like an outsider, that's when things became very interesting. And it actually affects the brain. So if you feel like an outsider in a meeting, it lights up the brain, the same part of the brain as if you're physically hurt. So if somebody hits you, it has the same reaction to the brain. And the brain will have to deal with it. It actually reduces our productivity in that meeting with approximately 30%. So it's super important that we make an inclusive working atmosphere to ensure that our employees are happy and productive.
I guess a lot of organization has actually felt that, both physically and then mentally, as you talk about for the brain and how that actually works. So I find that interesting as well. Kristin, I mean, you've been building multiple culture in Microsoft, Atea, Nordea, and now you're in Kongsberg Digital. What does it actually take to create true belonging in the workplace? What's your experience here?
Looping back to Ingrid, I think it's really about inclusion. It's also about defining belonging, because when you include someone, you obviously state that someone is in the lead, and then you try to fit in. But when you create belonging, it's really about finding and establishing an environment where people belong, not being excluded because they are bringing in their whole selves. So but when you're focusing on building innovation and culture of belonging, it's truly about opening up, building a safe environment where people feel that they can take part, they can bring in their ideas, they can disagree, they can really be their whole self. And I think what is important is to be directional from a leadership perspective, and at the same time really focusing on having an environment where people feel that they're safe, where they're able to contribute, and where they're also encouraged to challenge. And I think it's about curiosity, and there is no answer. So really for people to explore new ways of doing things, feel how to shape things in a new way, and for people to take part in something that is bigger than themselves. So focusing on the direction, focusing on how to do things in a new way, not to establish this is the way we do things here.
If I look at the Pexip, we are very strong on the culture and the values and so forth, but one of them has always been freedom and responsibility, and that has become even more applicable, right, on during COVID and so forth, and also how to engage people, then especially in cultural building when you never physically actually met them, you've just been on video with them and so forth. How do you actually build a culture of innovation across both individuals and teams? How do you do that?
It's a big question. So I can use one example from Kongsberg Digital. Over the last 2 years, we've been hiring 200 people, and they have all been forced to be at home offices, working remotely. And we have 32 different nationalities working globally connected. And I think it's about creating a feeling that we're part of something bigger. Companies don't disrupt, companies don't innovate, so it's about allowing people to contribute in different ways, and you need to establish different environments for doing so. So when you're not allowed to meet physically, you need to focus on how to use the different arenas in different ways. So I think it's about having newsletters, it's about having good video meetings, it's about having different ways of connecting people. And back to innovation, it's more about the mindset, and for people to feel that we're having the opportunity to do things from different perspectives. There's no answers. You're encouraged to continuously learn, to go out of your comfort zone, to do things from a perspective that if you're challenging the way we do things in the company, that's actually a good thing. And to learn from outside the company as well. And I think we are somewhat in a global world where it's easy to attract diverse talents, but to lead the diverse talents is much harder. So I think it's a crucial element of building innovation culture is leadership. and for people to feel that they're trusted, and that when you fail, that's part of building innovation power. Several elements, but I think culture and the focus on culture and leadership is crucial.
Good. Have you seen, I mean, you've been working Microsoft as an example, big American, one of the largest technology companies in the world, and then versus a Kongsberg Digital. Do you see differences in Norwegian culture in North America on actually letting people take initiative and do something?
I think it varies, and I think it also varies from different phases of a business.
Yep.
Obviously also the overall ambition and the meaning behind. But I think even though you have different businesses in different phases, it's all about people. I think for many of us, it's been 2 years of learning. It's been change on speed.
It's been a huge experiment, basically.
But for many of us, it started really to how do we have the technology in place in order to function. Now it's much more focused on culture. So I think from my experience, the companies that are highly into what are the cultural journey we are on as a company, they're much more successful in the digital space. Remembering that technology is a tool and the focus on culture is the element connecting in order to be able to lead in the digital sphere. I think is the key in order to be successful. But
So if then look at that, what are then your advice on how to successfully, if we can even call it that, gather and do vibrant work in a hybrid world? What are any recommendations? How do we do that?
I have many recommendations, but to start with, I think too many companies are focusing on time and space instead of focusing on activities. So if you kick off the dialogue in how to successfully set up in a hybrid space, it's more focused on what kind of assignments do you have. Starting with, for example, this week I'm going to have 2 different innovation workshops with my team. It's harder to do that successfully working remotely. So most preferably we should meet up in the project room. And obviously it's easier to do that physically, but you can also have a good project room done remotely. But starting defining what kinds of the assignments are we focusing on this week or this period, and then decide upon, then we should meet physically or digitally, or then we should go to the office. So I think moving the dialogue against what kind of assignments need to be done instead of focusing on how many days in the office or what kind of room should we meet and connect in. So having the focus on creativity and innovation, that's somewhat the focus for why we should meet up and connect in a different environment. But moving away from time and space to assignments and focus on what needs to be done. And another recommendation is that flexibility is, of course, a key element on how to be successful in a hybrid world. And remembering not putting yourself first.
How easy that?
But it's comfortable, and I think for 2 years now we've been taking care of self. So how can working remotely be beneficial for myself? But it's going forward. It's really about putting the customer first, and then setting the team first, and then yourself, and then define flexibility.
It's a good one. I've never been kind of a home office kind of guy, and I'm in sales, so I like to be in a vibrant office and interact with colleagues and customers and whatever. But also to be effective at home, I see it can be much more effective. And for me, at least, it's been also pleasant being closer to my family, and hopefully they think that as well. So there are the pros and cons on the both. But have you seen that working remotely, working digitally is even better for someone, or in certain occasions, or on different projects? Or
absolutely. I think we have several. As also Ingrid said, there's different personality types that prefers working in different contexts. So I think many have been really felt that in this period it's been really beneficial. And I think as a company we really need also to nudge people back to the office. What will be important going forward is to explore. and to be a bit more flexible and to also create areas where we can develop and learn as we go, because we're building what we don't know what the future will be like, but really as we build while we fly, it's about using the learnings in order to create a much more impactful future.
Yeah, it's great. And that's going to be almost like a second experiment, I think, as we move back into the offices and so forth. But I find this very interesting. But and we've seen lately here especially in Norway and in media and so on, there's been debates ongoing on does actually design matters, creating the right environments to basically again promote enthusiasm and engagement. Anne-Margrethe, you worked with some of the larger organizations in Norway, both government and public sector, and some of the biggest stock listed companies here as well. Does actually physical space impact our work, or is that just something where media is talking about?
Well, I think a lot of the things that you are talking about, Kristin, is like music. There's never one answer. And as architects, our role is to prepare the arena for all the activities and the functionality that you need. So for us, it's important to understand what's going on, what are the work processes, and most importantly, what are your goals? And if you are aiming to change, architecture and design can be a tool in making things happen.
Yep.
So for us to be able to design this arena for change, or for making innovation, or for you being able to reach your goals, it's important that the users are prepared and are engaged in the process, so that they can tell the story themselves. And it is actually about telling a story. And I said earlier that there's never one answer. Design matters in the way that people, as human beings, we care about our surroundings, we care about aesthetics, we care about the way we dress, and we care about the surroundings we are in. And when you belong to Pexip, or you belong to Kongsberg, or you belong to Telia, you are a part of the story.
Sure.
And you can tell this story that you are a part of, and it's part of your identity. And when you kind of, as an employee, you can picture yourself in these surroundings, you will seek back to it.
Could this be linked in even to culture, tribes, and what have you? You need to belong somewhere. You need to kind of, like your point. You want to take care of it if you actually feel belonging.
I think it's important to justify what's your heading, what's your logo, what's your brand.
Good point.
And you justify that by giving it some kind of identity. And design is part of that, or is one of the tools
to do exactly that.
To do exactly that.
I fully agree, and I also think that design nudge behavior now really redefine, using the momentum to define what kind of behavior we would like to see in the future. And I think the element is then to use the space differently. So you don't need to come to the office to work, because we have learned for 2 years now that it works perfectly well to work from home. Many of the assignments can be done remotely, but we are missing the elements of really connecting. And there's been a survey by HR Norway that has proven that during times of COVID, we have 30% less contacts during the day in the organization. So we've gone back to the silos, and we are focusing on our team, and we're able to do that, but we're missing the learning and innovation part of working cross functions. So what we're focusing on when moving into the new premises is for us to use the momentum to create a great space to connect, to learn, to work in project, and to work across projects. So instead, there's lots of discussions focusing on, should we reduce the office space in order to, because people can work from home, and we would like 50% to be in the office. We're doing the opposite. So we're actually expanding in order to create a great way to connect. And that's not the final answer for everyone, but for us, we're trying that now in order to see if that can nudge behavior for people then to remember that I actually would like to learn from my colleagues and work differently. So that's just one example.
Yes, it's our experience as well that I mean, architecture doesn't solve the problem, but it can be a part of the opportunity to make change, both to organizational change, cultural change. We've been planning creating spaces for flexible work for almost 30 years because the tools have actually been there. But in March 2020, everybody understood that it was possible and have experienced that it will change the way we will work coming forward. And so we also believe that it's not about less space, it's about having space to test and make alterations, and not custom-made solutions that are difficult to adjust.
So you echo what Kristin is saying, that they're
Absolutely.
not looking for smaller offices, almost the opposite.
Almost the opposite, but that a much larger part of the office space should be set off for collaboration and less for individual work.
So we learned that basically design matters to employee engagement. That's basically what you're all saying, and the culture and so on. So how are you then bridging the physical and the digital space design, if we can call it that, to enable then hybrid work? We spoke about over lunch today. We think every meeting is from now on is also a video meeting, as one example, right? So that has already changed. And
That's
how do you bridge that?
Yes, I think we have to accept that in a positive sense, that somebody will always participate digitally. In this meeting, we have had a participant on video, and we must take that into consideration. So obviously every room needs a screen, and you need to prepare the workspace so that anyone can take a digital meeting, also the ones that come unannounced. Because earlier we had, you had meeting spaces in the communication area, because you meet a colleague and you have a conversation. Now somebody suddenly calls you on Teams or something else, and you need to be able to take that call or that meeting without disturbing somebody else. So we think that we will see more solutions on this not cubicle, because that brings us back to kind of the 70s, but we call them hubs. It's hubs. It's the kind of phone booth furniture thing, or even a small movable room, which is like a plug and play. So that the area you rent is a space, and you have hybrids of furniture / rooms that you can move around, because it's not fixed. You can alter it.
For sure, interesting times, and I like to look into the, let's call it, logistics of it, and actually what an office is going to look like going forward. I do think even in open spaces, and and we've seen already, especially here at Pexip, as we've slowly been moving back into the offices, you might sit in the same meeting, but you're still sitting next to your colleague in an open space because of whatever, safety, security, and other reasons, right? So and you might sit at different desks every day and so on as well, right? So
yes, because agile working is you do different things during a day, and very seldom you sit in one place at the whole day. But also, Kristin, you had the example of innovation meeting, and that's when you need space. You need to move around, and you need to make room for what you don't really know is going to happen. Because it's kind of, you have to plan for the unexpected in an innovative setting, and I think we need to plan for the unexpected in the office space also. And what we recommend in all our projects now is to give yourself a little bit of time. Don't make too many
decisions
rules
now.
and decisions. We often say 3 months is what you need to know if something works or not.
Okay.
And after 3 months, you can start doing alterations, but make sure to take notes and register. But don't do the change straight away, because it takes time to adjust.
This is going to be interesting to follow. Ingrid, then looking at, let's call it the content even of the meetings as well, how should we think about, driving meeting equity? How should we think about that?
Meeting equity is really about the value of the meeting and making sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to feel important, to be seen, to participate, to collaborate and have impact. I think the important thing is to really start with the company's values and to make sure that it's founded in the culture so it feels authentic and genuine. We usually we use our values and call it the Pexip way approach. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One of our values is one team, and that fosters inclusiveness. But then being based in over 25 countries, it's sometimes a bit hard to make this equal opportunity to participate and have the impact. And one, I'm a bit ashamed to say, stupid thing we used to do was when we had a lot of people in the office, we put them all into a meeting room, and then the remote participants came on video. Most of the time it was okay, but sometimes people felt that they weren't really part of the discussion going on in the meeting room.
Not really included.
Yeah, and they were excluded also from the sort of social interaction before the meeting and after the meeting and even in the breaks. So now we do promote that even though people are in the same office, call in from your own device, call in from your own computer or meeting room, just to make sure that we have an equal opportunity to participate in the meeting. And another thing, again, being a sort of a global company and with the one team feel, you can't really ignore time zones. And you can't really expect people to get up in the middle of the night to participate in the meeting at midnight or 2 a.m. Or if you do expect it, at least they might not be as enthusiastic and productive as you would want them to be. So it's about deciding when you do what. If you absolutely need everyone to be in that same meeting at the same time, well, then maybe you should have an in-person meeting, not a hybrid meeting at that stage. So during the pandemic, that wasn't an option. And then, of course, you have to think creatively what to do. And there are probably a lot of things you can do, but one thing is to have the meeting organizers run the meetings twice. For instance, for us, we do it then early in the morning so that we cater for the people that are in the Pacific region and Australia. And then we do another one in the afternoon or evening to cater for the ones in the US, as well.
So you basically run the same meetings 2 times. But okay, that's it.
It's probably not ideal, but you have to deal with what you have to deal with. So,
absolutely. And I can sign that. For us, it has actually been working, right? And it's also about being conscious about it and
making sure people feel included and able to participate on their own terms.
Cool. What about leadership then? I mean, how do we actually lead in the change world? Has that changed as well as managers all here and leaders? So how do we think about that?
Yes, we have, and we aren't going back to what we had. And I think running a successful company in a hybrid world, we have to make sure that we have employees who are able to self-lead and self-motivate. And also people who enjoys the autonomy and flexibility that follows with it, and who really appreciates and values working across geographies and functions to share knowledge. And by self-leadership, we mean taking really full ownership and responsibility for your own tasks and area of responsibility, but also for ensuring to reach ambitious goals and setting those ambitious goals. So every single individual should look upon themselves and as CEOs of their own roles. And then to foster leadership or self-leadership in our employees, we need to lead with autonomy and trust and really enable and empower people to reach their full potential and set these ambitious goals and reach them. So going back to sort of an example again, it's imagine the feeling and the energy you have in yourself when you have really ambitious goals, you work together with your colleagues, you feel real ownership, you work hard, and you have a purpose with what you do. There's almost no end to the energy and what you can achieve in such a situation. When you have the situation where you come to work, you're told what to do, you perform your tasks, and then you leave, no problem, but that's how it is. The delta between those two situations is an enormous amount of energy and productivity and creativity. And when you multiply that with the number of people you have in your organization, it's serious innovation and productivity.
No, I can see that. Has your leaderships changed? Have you seen challenges on this?
Yeah, I really think that we see the differences between managers and leaders even more visible, because I think we expect different things from our leaders now. So for them to be much more caring, much more authentic, to be much more directional in a more visionary way will be important going forward. And as Ingrid said, also self-leadership as one of them. But I think we see a shift that we will expect our people all across the organization to take lead in a new way.
And have you seen organizations, are they focused on this now? How should we work with this? Do you see that Norwegian companies, are they good at this now, or are they finally waking up or slowly waking up? Or?
Oh, that's, I think yes to all your questions.
Okay, great. Even better.
Well, I think it is crucial for employers to make that happen and for everybody. I think if you don't fail, you haven't tried hard enough. And you should be allowed to make mistakes, but preferably not the same mistake many times. And as leaders, I think it's important to build the culture and the belonging and the reason for when we have to be together, when we have to meet physical, and define the event for when we need to be a group and when we need to strengthen the unity. And the remote work situation, I mean, you need to make clear meeting times and plan, you know. And I think many I've read that people who more junior personnel feel that they are seen, because in a meeting with your boss, you're the only one, and the boss has all focus on you. So I mean, you have the pros and cons for that as well.
So that's good. I think, well, we've seen in Pexip last year, we doubled the company from 200 to 400 employees. We're adding another 150 to 200 this year. So meaning actually 400 out of 600 people soon, we never physically met them, right? And I know you're super conscious also on wellness, right? So how does that actually fit? Kjell Nordström says the never new normal, which I personally like a lot, because it's constant change, right? So wellness in that setting, Ingrid, what do you think?
The most important thing about wellness, and you mentioned that earlier, it's about the trust and the to be seen and feel secure in your work environment, which is obviously number one. And something that we as employers need to be responsible for. But there's also other things to wellness, such as healthy food, it's mindfulness, physical activity, and so on. A lot of companies have started, and I'm sure you've seen more of it now, with these desks where you can take up or down, depending on whether you would like to sit or stand. There are meetings while you're walking. We have treadmills and so on. So I think a lot of things are really being done. And whether you do them digitally or in person doesn't really matter. It's the creativity that stops us, I guess. So we have quizzes on video. We had spinning sessions on video, and that's and lots of other things, competitions that go global, just to make sure that we sort of bring people together cross functions and cross geographies, making this world a bit, at least our Pexip world, a bit smaller, but to make sure that people are mentally and physically feeling okay. And we try to take care of them as much as we can.
I think, I mean, we didn't choose the pandemic, obviously, but we can choose to make use of all the good stuff that came out of it, which is that everybody understood that working digitally actually works, and experienced that flexibility doesn't mean that people don't deliver as they should. And many people experience a better kind of life balance, I think.
Absolutely, it tailors better for individual needs. We can sort of grow the workforce. People who couldn't sort of be a part of the workforce because they couldn't show up at 8 o'clock in the morning and continue for 8 hours, maybe because they had mental or physical health issues or special care responsibilities and so on. So it allows a lot of flexibility, and also we're saving the environment a lot of travel.
Which is probably a good thing as well.
And companies are saving quite a lot on travel costs and so on as well.
Just to not necessarily try to wrap it up, but still at the closing note, what are the things that we learned today? Things we talked about today that you will embrace or learned or stop doing, or anything we haven't spoken about?
No, I think moving back to where you kicked it off, I think it's a super opportunity to change behavior. It's about asking the larger questions, looking for new answers, and build where we fly.
Oh, that's a good one. How am I get that?
Start with the task at hand and then define how to create the arena for it, whether it be physical or digital or both, and I think to most extent it will be both. We have to be aware of what is it that we don't get by being on screen with each other. It's all the other stuff which isn't maybe measurable but very, very important.
But I think also we have an opportunity to use technology to become even more human.
Yeah.
So that's also part of the discussion.
Yes.
I think so too, and you said as well. I think both one in one-on-ones with your manager and so on, you get to be seen and so forth. Ingrid, what have you seen and learned? Anything we can pick up here for Pexip and how we drive the organization in Pexip?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've learned today is that we need the space that we have, which is a good thing. And then I want to also take with me something about what Mikael said about making sure that we're aligned when we go into meetings, ensuring that we sort of align our expectations in the meetings, being sort of aligned up front. What is it we're trying to do? Something that's good to sort of have in mind going forward.
Very good. Thanks again. Good to see and be part of the Oda network. Thanks for joining us today. Have a good one.